I'm Joe, I'm a writer and a stand-up comedian.
James, I'm a writer.
I'm Alex, I'm a writer.
I'm Lisa, I'm an actor and a writer.
Mikey, I'm a writer.
Jordan, writer.
Katie, I'm a writer.
Ben, I'm a writer.
Kevin, a writer.
Henry, a writer and actor.
Liam, my first piece is being read out tonight, so please be gentle.
Let's go back over there, behind Joe. Yeah.
Natalie, writer, hopefully at some point.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, welcome to London Comedy Writers. Welcome to everyone that's not been before and to those that have.
So, anyone who hasn't been here before, the setup of London Comedy Writers is that we have a short piece, we have feedback on that sketch or short piece, and then we have the main sitcom, then we have a break, another short piece, feedback on that, and then feedback on the sitcom, and then everyone goes home. If they have a home to go to, you know. Yeah, so I'm Al. I'm on the committee of London Comedy Writers. I started coming a few years back, and I was asked to join what is now a 6-person committee running it at the start of this year. The purpose of the group is to support and offer a platform for other writers. We get everyone from any ability, from people who are just interested in comedy to people who have a lot of credits. The comedy scene can be very closed off to new people, and this is an option to bring something along where, you know, whatever level you're at, you'll get it read and hopefully get some constructive criticism.
There's not many places like this in London where you can like regularly meet people who all have the same sort of shared ambition and love of comedy, and I've just written a sitcom and made it actually, and I think by coming here you sort of see how other people are doing it and the structure of comedy and what works.
Artists lose their way. This is where
At the last meeting 2 weeks ago, we had an episode of what we hope will be a London Comedy Writers scripted podcast called The Bureau of Lost Things. My episode was same as all of them really. It's set in a fictional bureau that deals with lost things, whether actual or metaphorical, 4 characters, and they get up to certain antics and so forth.
he's lost his edge. Come through.
You are now entering the diversion of discarded dreams. Wow! Look at all those scripts.
That's just the sitcom. There's also a warehouse of dramas where detectives with personality disorders investigate quirky serial killings.
Sound of Will leafing through sitcom scripts.
Flat share. Flat share. Flat share. Flat share.
Even though it's not a science, there are certain things that you learn just by being around it, like how humour works and like why people laugh. So I think it is a bit of a craft. And like there's people even in this group that are fucking good writers, but they don't send it because they don't want it out there because it's hard. It's so hard to get something back that says, you know, we didn't like it. So it's not necessarily the best people that make it. It's the people who just can handle that happening again and again and again and again. And that's why you shouldn't give up. But at the same time, I understand why people might not want to put it out there, because you're always going to get some, with comedy it's so subjective, you're always going to get people who don't like your stuff and don't understand it. So I think you have to be a little bit mental to be in it.
I started writing when I was about 5. My brother was born. I wrote a comic starring him as the hero. I mean, for me, writing's always been a compulsion, but in terms of writing comedy, it's that old cliche of if you went to a rough school or you lived in a violent neighbourhood, if you could make the bullies laugh, then they wouldn't hit you as much, and I think that's where it started, and it sort of carried on after that. But yeah, so been writing a long time, but not necessarily comedy. You start off thinking, oh, you know, my writing can change the world, and then you end up just wanting it to be read by someone.
You need a lot of luck, or you need to just be so resilient, because the one thing I think that differentiates people who make it and don't are people who just don't give up, and they like don't mind being rejected, which is really hard if you're going through it like year after year, to constantly being saying, this isn't for us, this isn't funny, to hear that stuff is like, God, you know, but it must be a strong love, because I still keep going for more rejection, so there's something there.
You think of people like Robin Williams, I suppose, who, sort of got some relief through comedy and performance for a long time, but it doesn't fight off depression. I think what, you know, one of our comic geniuses in this country, Spike Milligan, so he'd have weeks when he'd just stay in bed, and he'd have weeks where he would just, you know, create this marvellous comic world and incredibly prolifically. I think if, yeah, it's that whole tears of a clown cliche, isn't it? The number of stand-ups who are out there just depressed, but on stage are the funniest people you'll ever see. I do think that, yeah, one way of dealing with dark and difficult times is to try and joke about them, but it's tricky because, you know, there are certain things that, the environmental situation, war, conflict, some of the things that are kind of the worst things in the world and destroying the planet, but making them very funny by being so well observed and so slightly outlandish, but not so outlandish it takes you out of the real world. Comedy, traditionally, it's been a great way of pointing out the absurdities of the world by exaggerating them. Maybe comedy can make people think, but whether it can change things is a bigger question. I'm not sure.